guys, and welcome to Fandom Newbie. My name is Shruti, and I feel like I haven't done this in a billion years. Like, seriously, I switched on the camera and I did not know what to do or what to say, and I just stared at it for about a minute. But welcome back. Today, what we're going to be doing is basically I'm going to be ranking all 98 books that I read in 2021. Without further ado, let's just get started. Now, the tiers that I have made are, so at the top you have God level, so basically just the best of the best books that I read in 2021 are going to be God level. Then we have, oh wow, that was great. So these are not exactly God level books because God level are just like those immaculate chef's kiss kind of books, but these come really close. The third one was, that was a good book. So this is probably like a 3.5 or 4-star book. So again, not great, but it was a pretty good book. The fourth one is okay, but I had fun. So objectively speaking, this is not like a great book or not even like a good book. It was just okay, but I really enjoyed it. Then level 5 is a just meh, meaning it was just an okay book. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth tier is not my cup of tea. So for this, actually, because I read a lot of non-fiction books last year, this one is objectively speaking, it is actually a good book. It's a well-researched, well-written book, but it's just not my cup of tea. And the last one is, of course, awful. Those are my levels. So now let's start ranking. The first book is Call Me Maybe, which is actually an Audible original. So I listened to this audiobook on Audible, and this book is a sweet, cute rom-com book that just gives you the feeling of when you meet someone for the first time and you have a crush on them. It gives you those kind of butterflies in your stomach kind of feel. So this one, I think, goes straight into, oh wow, that was great. The next one was The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. It is a fast-paced, extremely twisted thriller that gets over, you can read it in one sitting, and it has the classic Gillian Flynn twistedness, I guess. And again, it was a pretty cool read. So for this, I'm gonna put it to, that was a good book. The next one is, oh, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. It's not scary, in your face, gives you chills kind of scary. There are moments which are frightening, but overall, it's a more psychological, atmospheric, slow-paced thriller. I personally really liked it, but I think I'm gonna rank it in, yes, that was a good book. The next one is The Girl Who Came Home. So this book is a historical fiction book, but it is actually based on the lives of real life third-class passengers on the Titanic, and it does have a romance angle to it, and it's just especially if you're a fan of Titanic and just want to know more about the ship, I feel like it is a really, really heart-wrenching but also really nice experience. So this one also I'm going to put in, that was a good book. The next one is Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang, and we have our first God level book. So The Poppy War, I have only read the first 2 books in this series. So The Poppy War is the first book and The Dragon Republic is the second book in the series, but it is just such an exquisite fantasy. Even though it's fantasy, even though there are magical elements, it just describes war in such a gritty and real way that it's an extremely immersive experience reading this fantasy novel, and I absolutely loved it. The next one is Influence. Okay, so this one I'm gonna put in okay, but I had fun. It's this murder mystery story set in the world of influencers in LA. A very, very fun book, but objectively speaking, it was just okay. Next, we have the Infernal Devices trilogy, and we have all 3 of them together. This one, okay, these all 3 I'm gonna put in, oh wow, that was great. So this trilogy is set in the Shadowhunters universe that Cassandra Clare has created, and the love triangle in this book is so nice and it's so like heartwarming, and the characters are just so amazing, and you fall in love with all of them. And yeah, amazing fantasy book, but the love triangle is why I love it the most. The next one is Rebecca. This one also, I think, goes in, oh wow, that was great. It had like this creepy vibe to it throughout, but overall it was just a really atmospheric book that sucks you into this world of these characters, and just, yeah, very well written. The next book is The Sky Beyond the Storm, and again, we have a god level book. Now, this is the fourth book of the Ember in the Ashes series, and I think I've spoken a lot about that series on this channel. You guys know that it's one of my all-time favorite books. Like, I love that book so much. It's an amazing fantasy. It's Middle Eastern inspired. It has amazing characters that you cannot help but fall in love with, and it is just exquisite writing. Read An Ember in the Ashes. It is just amazing. Next up, we have Murder on Malabar Hill, and this one I'm going to actually put in... Okay, I think I'm going to put it in That Was a Good Book. This book is a historical fiction book set in 1920s in Bombay when it was still ruled by the British, and it is a great look at like Indian society while under the rule of the British, and it has a really interesting mystery, and it also talks about how women were treated during that time. It's quite a feminist book, and I really enjoyed it, so highly recommend. Check out The Murder on Malabar Hill. Next one is Sadie, and I think this is god level. I really think this is god level. I really like this book. I listened to the audiobook version of this actually. And it is such a well-produced audiobook. It's a very immersive mystery. It talks about some extremely hard-hitting topics like alcoholism, drug abuse, sexual abuse, and really hard-hitting story, and just very well written, in my opinion. The next one is Killjoy. So this is the prequel to what is that? Yeah, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This is a prequel to The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and this one I'm just gonna put in That Was a Good Book. Yeah, That Was a Good Book. So this is a prequel, so it's like the characters from A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, they host a murder mystery party, but overall it was a really fun like book. I think again I listened to the audiobook version of this, and it was quite fun to listen to. The next one is Murder on the Orient Express, and this one I'm gonna say, oh wow, that was great. It's classic Agatha Christie. It has quirky characters. It has a really good like whodunit kind of mystery. It has an amazing ending with a twist that I just like did not see coming. It's perfect. Read this book. Next one, we have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and this one, again, I think, oh wow, that was great. I feel there are going to be so many books in oh wow, that was great, because I read some really good books last year. Like seriously, I had such a good reading year. So yeah, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, again, a really good murder mystery book. Check it out. It has some very nice characters and a very like intelligent, nerdy main like female protagonist, which I always love. So check it out. Next one is The Coldest Case. This was again, I think, an Audible original, and this one I'm going to put in okay, but I had fun. This has an amazing cast. Like the audiobook has really good actors, so listening to this was an amazing experience. But like writing wise and story wise, it was like okay, but just because it had such amazing actors, it was a really fun listening experience. The next one is Susanna Seven Husband by Ruskin Bond. This one I'm going to put in That Was a Good Book. This book, yeah, it's a solid good book. The thing that I really liked about this book is just like you're left guessing until the very end as to who the murderer or killer is in this book, or whether there actually even is a murderer or killer. And that was a really like good part about this book. So yeah, solid book. Check it out if you haven't. Next we have Shadow and Bone. Okay, so this, I didn't really like this book series, to be honest. The Grisha trilogy, I didn't really like. So I think this one, all three of them, I'm gonna put in just meh. Controversial opinion, I know, but that's where I'm gonna put it. The Poppy War, okay, we spoke about this already. God tier, like 100% God tier. The Song of Achilles, ha, easy God tier. Just straight up God tier. This is one of my favorite books of all time. It is so poetic and beautiful. It's basically the story of the Iliad by Homer. It's a retelling of that. And it's beautiful and it's heart-wrenching and it will make you cry and it is just outstanding. Next one is The Mercies, and this one, oh wow, that was great. If you're looking for an amazing feminist book to read The Mercies. It is such an impactful and powerful book, and it will make you outraged, but also at the same time, like, keep you hooked, and just you will feel so much for the characters in this book. Like, it is such a powerful, powerful book. Read The Mercies, especially if you want something feminist. Read this book. It's so, so good. Next one is Pride and Premeditation. This one, okay, I'm gonna put it in this. Okay, but I had fun. Objectively speaking, I don't know if this is like a great book. There were some parts of it which I thought were a bit like over dramatic and like over the top, but I had a great time reading this book. It is such a good Pride and Prejudice retelling. So like, if you like Pride and Prejudice, I feel like you'll really, really like this book. The next one is Nimona, which is, oh wow, that was great. This is a fantasy graphic novel, and it is just such a good exploration of morally gray characters. And even though it's like a graphic novel and it's a very, very simple story, it's just so much, it has quite a lot of depth in it, and it's just so much fun. Next, we have An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, and that is straight to God level. I love this book. It's a book that shows a mirror to society, especially the society that we live in, that is so immersed in like internet culture and things like that. Read this book. Hank Green is an amazing, amazing author. Like, I feel with this book, he's like better than his brother John Green. Honestly, don't come at me for that. But read this book. It's so good. Next one, we have Sita and we have Ravan. Ravan, I'm gonna put in, oh wow, that was great, because I really liked the way that Amish Tripathi wrote this book. Like, finally, it felt like his characters were not one-dimensional, and he was capable of writing like gray characters with different shades of like evil and goodness in them. So I really like that about his writing in this book. That's why I'm going to put it in, oh wow, that was great. But Sita, I think I'm going to put this in okay, but I had fun, because objectively speaking, I don't like Amish Tripathi's writing, but I really had fun with this book. I really enjoyed, I really enjoyed the Ramchandra series, for that matter. Like, I mean, I found it a lot better than the Shiva trilogy, which I know is an unpopular opinion. People love the Shiva trilogy and hate the Ramchandra series. But for me, it was the other way around. I really like the Ramchandra series a lot more than the Shiva trilogy. But objectively speaking, I think the writing is just okay. The next one is Bhauri. This one I'm going to put in, that was a good book. So if you're looking for another good feminist book with a very like, I didn't see that coming kind of ending, check out Bhauri. It was a solid, like, good book. I really enjoyed it. Next one was Dophehari by Pankaj Kapoor, and this one I really liked. And this would go in, oh wow, that was great. Like I said, I feel like this tier is going to be filled with a lot of books because I liked so many books last year. Next one, we have The Gurkha and the Lord of Tuesday. This was such a fun science fiction book. I'm going to put it in, that was a good book. It was really, really like an interesting take on the science fiction, like, robots taking over the world kind of genre, because it has like these robots that have taken over Kathmandu, I think, in Nepal, if I'm not mistaken. And then it has a genie. So it's like a mixture of science fiction and fantasy and what happens when those two worlds collide. Next, we have Anxious People by Frederick Backman, and this one I'm going to put in, oh wow, that was great. I had such a fun time reading this book. It again has so many heartwarming characters, quirky characters who are all misfits in society, and they all get stuck in one room together and have to deal with one another. And that, I feel, is like the best place for stories to happen. The next one is Jwala Kumar and the Gift of Fire, and this I'm going to put in, that was a good book. This book is basically a children's book, a fantasy children's book about a dragon and how he changes the life of a family that lives in a village in rural India. And it is very sweet, but also it gives a really good look at how decrepit the life of these people can be who live in rural India. And it's quite thought-provoking also. Next, we have the Percy Jackson series, and I think this one I'm going to split them up. The Lightning Thief I'm going to put in, oh wow, that was great. I really liked The Lightning Thief a lot. The Sea of Monsters, I think I'm going to put in, that was a good book. What was the third one? I can't remember. Okay, so the Labyrinth one, this one I know I did not enjoy this one. And the reason for this is because all the Percy Jackson books have the same structure. So by the time, like, I binge read this series for the Bookbound Club, and by the time I got to the fourth book, I was just like really bored of the repetitive structure of the Percy Jackson books. So this one, I'm gonna put in just meh. I know that's a very unpopular opinion, but I really did not like this book. The third one, I can't remember. The third one, I think, is the one where we have those girls, right? Like the young girls. I don't want to give any spoilers. I think that's the third book, which I really liked. I really liked the third book, I think. So I'm going to put that in, that was great. If that's the one which has those, like, the young girls who can't get married anymore. What were their names? Oh my God, my memory is so bad. But anyway, I think that's the third book. And that's why it was really great. I really liked that book. And the last one was phenomenal. So the last one, I think, goes in God level because it was just absolutely epic. And there were so many parallels drawn from so many different Greek myths. One of them being the Song of Achilles. And I was just like blown away by Rick Riordan's writing. So the last one is definitely God level. Next, we have Kari, which is, oh wow, that was great. This tier is just like filling up. It's an Indian graphic novel and it's a book about mental health. It's a book about exploring your sexuality and what it is like to be a young lesbian living in Bombay in the 90s. If you like really abstract, strange, like poetic kind of writing, then I think you'll really love this book. So check it out. Next one is Men Without Women. And this one, I'm confused because like I liked Murakami's writing, but at the same time, I find his like objectification of women so annoying and like irritating to read. So I don't know. I liked a lot of the short stories in this though. Okay, maybe I'm gonna bump it up to that was a good book. Because some of them are really good. Some of them are really insightful as well. Okay, then we have the Chain of Gold, Chain of Iron series by Cassandra Clare, which is a sequel series to the Infernal Devices trilogy. And this I'm gonna put in okay, but I had fun. I really enjoyed the series and it was like a guilty pleasure read. Okay, next we have okay, I'm gonna do these three together. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Hitchhiker's Guide, and Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. The first two go straight to God level. I love these books. I absolutely love these books. And the Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, it was another really good book, but I'm gonna put this in oh wow, that's great, because it wasn't exactly like God level. I don't know, it just made me feel a lot of feels. Next up, Oh, this was, I think, Remembering Heaven or something. I can't read. Refusing Heaven? Something like that, I think. This one goes in Not My Cup of Tea. It's the first book in this one. This is a poetry book, and I just don't understand poetry. I don't get poetry at all. So that's why it goes in Not My Cup of Tea. The next one is The Great Gatsby, and this one I think that was a good book. I really love the atmosphericness of the 20s and like all of the parties that are described in this book. I really like that. Next is The Five People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. This one also I think was a good book. Again, extremely like thought-provoking and imparts good lessons without it feeling like they are shoving them down your throat. The History of The History of Love by Nicole Krauss. Okay, this one I'm gonna put in meh. It's a meh book because it's nice. There are some parts of it which were nice, but like I can't remember anything about it right now. The next is Lord of the Flies, and this one goes in maybe that was a good book. I quite like this book as well. I don't know whether it's great or like God level, but again, a solid, good book. Would recommend it. Next, we have What the Pandemic Learned from Me. And this one, I think I'm going to put it okay, but I had fun. It's a very, very relatable book based off of the experiences of this author during the pandemic, which I think all of us experienced. It's not the most nuanced or insightful book, but it's super relatable and funny. Next, we have The King of Scars duology. This one, okay, I think I'm going to put it in okay, but I had fun. Or I'm going to do this or this. I can't remember. Bah, what do I do? No, I think it's this. There are things that happen in King of Scars that I'm just like, I have no idea what is going on and why this is happening. So King of Scars for me was not the best book, but I had a great time because it had so many of my like most favorite characters like spoken about in this book. So I really enjoyed it. But Rule of Wolves, I enjoyed more than King of Scars. It had more of the political intrigue that I was looking for in King of Scars, but it actually happened in Rule of Wolves. Next, we have Clap and You Land, and this is God level. This was such a good book. Oh my God, Elizabeth Acevedo is such a good writer, and her audiobooks are so powerful and emotional and have just like, they just make you feel so much for these characters. Next up, we have The Shining. And this goes in, oh wow, that was great. I really enjoyed this book. It's such a good exploration of characters. Like, it's such good character development. Stephen King is so good with that. And he explores human behavior through this supernatural horror element. And it's just amazing. Next, we have Raptor Rising. And this one I'm going to put in, that was a good book. It's a very gritty, very violent thriller, and the serial killer in this book is a woman, which I thought was super interesting. So if you're looking for a really good Indian serial killer gritty mystery book, then check this out. Next, we have The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and this one goes in, oh wow, that was great. Again, talks about really important topics like mental health and really encapsulate what it's like being a teenager and trying to find your place in your school or like with your friends group or whatever. So it's a really good representation of what it's like to be a teenager, I feel. Next, we have The Unbearable Lightness of Being, and this one I think I'm going to put in, that was a good book. This book is just a very insightful look into how you should lead your life. And the thing that I really liked about this book is how it doesn't tell you how to lead your life. It just gives you two options and lets you decide which is best for you. And it does that. It gives all of these like philosophical teachings through a fictional story and fictional characters. Next, we have The Strange Death of Anindya Sundar, if I'm getting that right. And that one, I'm gonna put it okay, but I had fun. This was an audiobook, which was a Storytel original, and it's read by Rahul Bose, and it was really fun. It felt like I was listening to a play almost. Next is Train to Pakistan, and this one, I think for me, is God level. This book just made me feel so many different emotions. The partition is something that we all learn in history, but we don't really learn everything about it. So to read this book and really understand what might have happened during that time is just a very, very powerful experience. It was one for me, at least. Next, we have Clear Light of Day. And this one was just meh for me. Like, basically, I went into this book thinking that it was going to be a partition book, but it's not. It's a really slow burn kind of book about like family politics. And that's just like, I don't know, I just felt really bored reading this book. It's a well-written book, but I felt just like, I just felt really bored. The next is Shadow Lines by Amitav Ghosh, and this one was a great book. Like, oh wow, that was great. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. Next, we have The Burden of Democracy, and this was also a great, great book. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. It's such an insightful look into the evolution of politics in India. It's a very difficult book to read, extremely, extremely difficult book to read. But if you can manage like very difficult English writing, then check this book out because it gives a really, really insightful look into just democracy in general in our country and how like politics and society and different things affects democracy. Next, we have Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, and I'm going to put this in, I think, great or good. Maybe good, considering it took me like, this was like my 5th or 6th attempt or like 4th or 5th attempt or something at reading this book. It's a really good book, but it was very difficult for me to get through this book because I got bored with it a few times like before. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in, that was a good book. Next, we have This Is How You Lose the Time War. And I think this is the first time we have our awful book, because this book was just so confusing and I felt like it was unnecessarily poetic. Now, I know some people might actually love this book, which is why I have recommended it sometimes. So if you really like flowery and very, very over-the-top poetic kind of writing, then you might actually like this book. But for me, I just could not understand it. I was bored halfway through, and it's not even such a long book to begin with. I didn't understand the point of this book, and that's why for me this is like the worst book that I read in 2021. Next, we have The Discovery of India by Jawaharlal Nehru, and this one I'm going to put again in, that was a good book. It was a really, really good book. Like, I love the chapters where he talks about like India's freedom struggle, especially. Really good insight into that part of like Indian history coming from someone who lived through it. Definitely check it out if you guys like nonfiction. Next, we have The Stranger by Albert Camus, and this one also goes in, that was a good book. Again, a very insightful look at like existentialism and life in general. Check it out if you haven't. Next is Jailbird by Kurt Vonnegut, and this one, I don't know if it goes in not my cup of tea or awful, because again, I just did not like this book at all. Okay, I think I'm gonna put it in awful. I was really, really bored reading this book, so yeah, I'll put it here. Next is Persepolis, which goes straight to God level. Amazing, amazing, amazing graphic novel, and just very, very simply and beautifully written. Check it out. Next is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali, and this one I'm gonna put in, I think that was a good book. Solid good book. Really enjoyed the love story. Talks, like, gives really good insight into Iranian culture, especially food and sights and smells of like markets. So beautifully written in this book. Overall, a pretty good book. Check it out. Next is The Idea of India by Sunil Khilnani. This one, I'm going to put in, it was a good book. It talks about what it means to be Indian and gives different aspects of Indianness and like different things that encompass being an Indian. And it was quite insightful, especially the chapters about the different Indian cities and the evolution of Indian cities. It was really quite fun to read that. Next is Agniban, Guardians of the Fire Chamber, and this one I'm going to put in okay, but I had fun. This is kind of like a Dan Brown version of like an Indian Dan Brown book. It had that kind of feel to, like that kind of vibe for me. Next is The House in the Cerulean Sea, and for me this one was, oh wow, that was great. Extremely heartwarming. Check it out if you want to read a book that feels like a warm hug. Political Violence in Ancient India. This one, I really liked this book, but I also it felt like I was reading a history textbook, which it was. It was very history focused. So like I liked some parts of it, but it did take a lot of energy for me to actually read this book. Okay, next up we have Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay, and this one I'm gonna put in okay, but I had fun. This was also like a collection of like essays about feminism, and there were some which were great because they spoke about like pop culture references that I understood, but this book is very American, so there was something that just went straight over my head, but overall I had a good time with this book. Next is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and this one I'm gonna put in that was a good book. I really enjoyed this book. Again, this was quite heartwarming and a different take on the entire like time travel genre. It's just a very sweet book. Next up we have Kite Runner, and this one I think goes in, oh wow, that was great. For me, it's not God level because God level is 1,000 Splendid Suns. Like that is just ultimate God level for me. Kite Runner is actually, oh wow, that was great. Next is Wings of Fire, and this one again I'm gonna put in that was a good book. Really good insight into the evolution of like India's science programs and like their technology, and especially their like weaponry and defense weapons and things like that. Next is A Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, and this one goes in God level. I adore this book. It is atmospheric, it is mysterious, it is amazing writing, and just like so good. Next is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. This one was surprising for me, but like it was a great book. Like it was so good. This is a book about the life of an English butler, and I thought that was just be like so boring, but no, it's surprisingly heartwarming and just so well written. Next we have Makers of Modern India, and this one also goes in not my cup of tea. It's a very insightful book. It's basically a compilation of like speeches and excerpts from articles from like different freedom fighters and important people, like important political as well as important people who have been like social workers and stuff in India, and it's excerpts of their literature and their speeches and things like that. And some of them are very interesting to read, but some of them again just it made me feel like I was reading a textbook. Next is The Italian Girl, and this one again, you know what, like I know that when I was reading it I was like liking it, but now I really can't remember that much about it, so I'm going to put it in meh. I really cannot remember anything about this book, which is sad because I know that I feel like I enjoyed it. I know that it was very atmospheric, like especially I think talking about like the different countryside, like Italian setting, and especially like the different, I guess they were like opera artists in this book. So like the different like operas of Europe were really nice, but that's the only thing I remember about this book. The Forest of Enchantments. This one also I'm going to put in just meh. It was nice. It was nice. It was the thing is that it was really nice, this book, And I liked it when I read it, but then I read a much better retelling of the Ramayana from Sita's point of view, and that's why this book became meh, to be honest. Like, I liked it until I read it. I had read just this. And then I read one more, which is coming up, The Liberation of Sita. This one. Yeah, this one was a great book. Like, this is such a good retelling of the Ramayana from Sita's point of view that The Forest of Enchantment just became meh for me. Okay, so the next one is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. And this one I'm going to put in, that was a good book. Super atmospheric, especially the way Ernest Hemingway has described the sea. And just overall makes you feel like you are on that boat with that fisherman. Next one is The Last Gift, and this one also was a good book. It really talks about the life of immigrants and the different nuances of the life of an immigrant in a Western country. Next, we have Unfinished by Priyanka Chopra Jonas, and this one I'm gonna put in just meh because I didn't really enjoy this book as much as I thought I would have because her life is super interesting. But yeah, I read an entire review of this if you guys want to check it out. But yeah, I didn't enjoy this book that much. I found it quite bland. After this, we have The Home and the World by Rabindranath Tagore, and this one I'm gonna put in, I think that was a good book. It is a historical fiction book, but it just feels very, very modern, and I loved that about Rabindranath Tagore's writing. After that is As I See by Kiran Bedi, and this one I'm gonna put in just meh. It wasn't a very, very well written book in my opinion, and again didn't have a lot of insight. After this we have 100 Years of Solitude, and this one I am putting in, oh wow, that was a great book. This is the strangest book I have read. It also just makes you go, huh? In so many different parts of the book, but it's still very, very well written and atmospheric and immersive. So yeah, check it out. It's a great book. Next is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and this one is a god level book. I loved this book. This book was so well written, and it is surprisingly heartwarming, and surprisingly it made me cry, and Andy Weir's writing is just so witty and funny, and I loved it. Next is Tuesdays with Maury, and this one I'm gonna put in, that was a good book. A really well-written self-help book, in my opinion. Next, we have Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, and this one I'm gonna put in, that was a good book. I really, really enjoyed this book. Like, reading about the stories of Loki and Thor and Odin was so much fun. Next is Hench, and this one I'm putting in, oh wow, that was great. This is such an interesting take on the superhero genre. So if you're a superhero fan, then definitely check out this book. It is so entertaining. Next one is Just Haven't Met You Yet, and this one again I'm gonna put in, oh wow, that was great. It is just the cutest rom-com kind of book, and it's perfect to read because it's like a travel themed love story. It's just so cute and so much fun. So yeah. And the last one is The Silent Patient, and this one, I don't know if I want to put it in meh or awful. I don't think it was awful, so I'm going to put it in meh. It was very, very binge-worthy. Like, I could not put this book down. So if you're looking for a very easy to read binge-worthy thriller, then check this book out. But for me, because it was so predictable, it's just meh. So yes, this is my list, and I'm really happy with my reading year, honestly. Like, I read some fantastic books last year. I read extremely diversely last year. I read so much nonfiction, and I'm excited to see what 2022 has in store for me. So yeah, that was today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below which was your favorite book or your top 3 favorite books of 2021. I'd love to know, and also get some recommendations maybe. Yup, that's it for today's video. Do subscribe to my channel if you want more book related videos like this, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.